Elijah Hart, the heir to one of the country's most powerful fortunes, was no stranger to attention. With piercing blue eyes, a jawline chiseled like sculpture, and a presence that exuded wealth and power, women flocked to him like bees to nectar. But in all his years, through all the designer smiles and whispered promises, Elijah had learned one painful truth: love came at a cost. And for him, that cost was his heart. He had given it away too many times. First, to the charming heiress who kissed him in the back of a Rolls-Royce and left him the moment a more powerful match came along. Then, to the model who saw his soul, or so she claimed, only to be caught trading his secrets for a tabloid headline. And finally, to the one who broke him. Her name was Celeste, and with her, Elijah believed he'd finally found something real. She was gentle, artistic, different. But it was all a mirage. When she left, she didn't just break his heart, she shattered his spirit. The last fight ended with Elijah drunk on the rooftop of his penthouse, the wind teasing his balance as tears streamed down his face. He hadn't planned to jump, not exactly, but in that moment, he didn't care if he fell. His father, Richard Hart, watched all of this from the shadows of wealth and worry. A man known for building empires with iron resolve and strategic brilliance, Richard was utterly powerless in the face of his son's suffering. Elijah had inherited his name, his features, and even his ambition, but not his resilience. Not when it came to love. It was in the stillness of one sleepless night that Richard made the hardest decision of his life. Not a business deal, not a political maneuver, but something deeply personal. He was sending Elijah away, not to rehab, not to another therapist in Beverly Hills, but to a rural village in the deep countryside, where one of Richard's oldest relatives lived a quiet life running a small vineyard. Elijah was to stay there indefinitely, far from luxury, far from scandal, and far from the world that had broken him. "You won't like it," Richard said, placing a folded piece of paper with the address in Elijah's hand. "But maybe that's exactly what you need." The journey by land was long and uncomfortable. Elijah took a series of buses from city to town, then to smaller, dustier roads that narrowed the farther he went. He was out of place in every way, from his designer boots now scuffed with dirt, to the stares of curious locals as he passed through quiet stations. But the worst was yet to come. Somewhere between the last stop and the final village, the old rickety bus broke down. Elijah, frustrated and disoriented, decided to walk the remaining distance, guided by GPS on his phone and the handwritten address from his father. That's when it happened. A group of local thugs, young, desperate, and looking for a quick grab, cornered him on a narrow footpath through the trees. Elijah tried to fight, but they were too many. They beat him, took everything: his bag, his wallet, his phone. One of them even ripped the note from his hand and laughed before tearing it into shreds. By the time they were done, Elijah was left in the dirt with a bleeding lip, bruised ribs, and no way to identify who he was or where he was going. He walked for hours. Every step was pain. His face was swollen, his shirt torn and stained with blood. The sun dipped below the hills by the time he stumbled into the village market. It was a quiet place, wooden stalls, clay pots, the smell of firewood and fruit, but the moment Elijah appeared, everything stopped. Eyes turned. Conversations froze. Mothers pulled their children behind them. Shopkeepers went silent. He must have looked like a madman, blooded, filthy, and wild-eyed. He tried to speak, to ask for help, but his throat was dry and his words came out broken, unintelligible. No one answered. No one moved. They just stared, unsure if he was dangerous, insane, or cursed. The weight of humiliation crashed down harder than any blow he'd received. Elijah sat down slowly on the stone pavement beside a crate of mangoes and buried his face in his hands. He had never felt so small, so invisible, so alone. The world he knew had vanished completely. Elijah sat on the cold, uneven stone of the village market floor, his once pristine shirt now stained with dust, blood, and shame. The sting of bruises across his ribs pulsed in rhythm with the pounding in his head. Around him, the world moved slowly, merchants whispering to each other, curious stares thrown his way, and yet not a single hand offered to help. He had never felt so truly invisible. No phone. No wallet. No change of clothes. Not even the address he was supposed to use to find his destination. The torn piece of paper with his cousin's contact information had been the final blow, snatched and shredded by the same gang that left him bruised in the woods. All he had was a name, Micah. Micah Hart. His father's cousin, someone Elijah had only met once during a family gathering years ago. He didn't even remember what the man looked like, only that he was kind and had once shared a slice of mango with him at a garden party. And now, that single memory was all he had to guide him. The heat of the sun began to soften as the sky turned a soft gold. Evening was approaching. The market grew less crowded as vendors packed up their goods, the scent of roasted yams and spices fading into the background. Still, Elijah sat, unmoving, defeated. And then a shadow blocked the light in front of him. "Hey," came a soft, melodic voice. "You okay?" Elijah slowly raised his head. Standing before him was a woman, no, a girl, no, something in between. Her natural beauty was the first thing he noticed. Glowing brown skin, full lips, high cheekbones, and eyes that looked like warm honey beneath the sun. Her hair was wrapped in a simple scarf, and her long skirt swayed slightly in the breeze. She carried a basket full of groceries and a satchel strapped over one shoulder. She wore no makeup, no expensive jewelry, but she glowed in a way that felt celestial. Elijah tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "You look like you've been through hell," she said, crouching slightly. Her tone wasn't mocking, it was honest, concerned. "What happened to you?" He licked his lips and forced out a hoarse whisper. "I was robbed, on the way here. Lost everything. My phone. My wallet. Even the address of where I'm supposed to be." Her brows furrowed with worry. "Where were you heading?" I don't know. Just a village near here. I was supposed to meet someone named Micah Hart. My cousin." The girl paused, tilting her head slightly as if searching her memory. And then her eyes lit up. "Micah Hart. I know that name. He lives in the next village over. About 15 minutes from here by bike." Elijah's eyes widened slightly, the first flicker of hope returning to his expression. "Can you take me there?" he asked, voice still shaky. The girl looked down at the basket in her hands and sighed. "I can't, but I can help you get to the village bus stop. From there, it's a short walk. I was sent to the market by my madam. I used most of the money, but there's just enough left for a bike fare. If I give that away, she'll skin me alive." She paused, visibly debating, then exhaled. "But you look worse off than I'll be. Come on." Without waiting for a reply, she walked to a nearby stall and spoke with a man who had a dusty motorcycle and a tired face. After a brief exchange, she handed him the last of her money, coins and small bills, before turning back to Elijah. "Let's go," she said simply. He stood up slowly, wincing from the pain, and followed her. As they walked toward the motorbike, he turned to her, eyes full of cautious gratitude. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. She looked at him, one corner of her mouth lifting into a sad, sweet smile. "Because someone once helped me when I had nothing. It's just how the world should work." They rode together in silence. Elijah sat behind the rider while the girl perched lightly on the side, holding her basket close to her chest. The road curved through fields of tall grass and distant hills. The air was cleaner here, with a faint scent of flowers and earth. When they arrived at the small village bus stop, she hopped off first and handed the rider her basket. "He'll drop you off 2 turns before the vineyard. Just follow the signs. Everyone knows Micah Hart around here." Elijah turned to her, overwhelmed by the weight of her kindness. "Wait, I don't even know your name." But she was already stepping away, her scarf blowing in the evening breeze. "It's not far," she called out, pointing down the dirt path. "Just keep walking straight after he drops you. You'll find him." And with that, she turned and walked away, disappearing around a bend in the road before Elijah could say anything more. He stood there, watching her go, a strange ache blooming in his chest, not pain, not sadness, but something gentle and unfamiliar. A pull. A curiosity. A hope. He hadn't even asked for her name. But her face, the way the light danced on her skin, the steady strength in her voice, he would remember all of it. Something in him whispered that this wasn't the last time they'd cross paths. And for the first time since the day his heart shattered, Elijah smiled, not because of something he had, but because of something he had found. A reason to believe again.